Are you guys ready to do this?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So one more time, good evening and welcome to the Songwriting School of Los Angeles. How are you guys doing? This is an exciting night. We're grateful to get to put on an event like this for free, and it's always because of the generosity of the distinguished speaker, so be sure to give him lots of love and gratitude, and I will introduce him in a moment. I was saying before that just among the people I know in this room, there is phenomenal talent, but we have accomplished producers and writers. We got a 4-star Billboard record over here, one of my favorites. I'm just saying, international artists. There's a lot of international touring artists in this room. You were just in China, weren't you? Yeah, okay, anyway.
All right.
Point is, there's a lot of vested interest in this conversation about how to tour Europe. So we're really grateful to have Brett Perkins here. Brett has been making a living as a songwriter, as a performer, as a facilitator as well for the creativity of other songwriters internationally for many decades. He has songs in film and television. He had a charting cut with Mads Langer. I didn't tell you that I got to co-write with Mads, and he's so amazing. It's ridiculous. But anyway, he has vast experiences, and he has been a great facilitator to many a songwriter, and we're grateful to have him here to get indie with it and to talk about how it is that you might tour Europe. So the Songwriting School is pleased to welcome you.
I got to work that head move into my title kit. Indie with it. I am actually the only singer-songwriter, probably willing to admit this as well, but I was a Soul Train dancer for one season.
Oh, yeah.
Don't make me bring out the moves, I could hurt myself. So, yeah, I kind of usually reserve that for the end of the talk. So, good evening. Some familiar faces and lots of interesting stories, I'm sure. When I go to a workshop, and I'm in the audience, I like to know what's going to happen, at least the structure. So I'm going to start out by telling you my plan for this evening and the way I'd like it to go, and then we'll see what actually happens. So I have no attachment to outcome, just intent. So to begin with, I plan to talk for about an hour, which I'm quite capable of doing. If I speed up too much, which I also tend to do, or if I use terminology, industry speak, which I really try not to do, but it can happen, and you don't understand something I'm saying or was unclear, please throw a hand up and say, I didn't get that. Other questions, and I imagine there'll be quite a few, and comments and people who can help answer those questions, because they're such a resource in the room. I would prefer to leave that for the end, and we'll have a Q&A period. So if you've got a question, try to hang on to it, and because otherwise it works to have the dialogue, but then we're here for several hours, and so we have a deal to be done at 9 tonight, and then I'm going to be going into the other room and talking to another group for a brief while. So we will go without a break for an hour, and we'll see how we do. If you need to go out, just do so subtly if you can. And I have something called the listening room agreement that I like to offer up when I do workshops, when I do the retreats, when the listening room concert series in Denmark, which started here in California 25 years ago. And that is to ask that we hold the room together by doing our best to not disrupt the flow of the conversation. If anyone is speaking, anyone is asking a question, I understand it's all about me. When anyone else is asking a question, refraining from jumping in. We're an excitable, creative group usually, so songwriters are like, yeah, I got an idea, woo! And that can be great too, but for me, I actually do this very much in a stream of consciousness. I mean, I have notes, I know what I'm going to talk about, but I don't have a rigid plan, so if I'm mid-stream and somebody goes, hey, what about this? I'm like, whoops, all the little bits fall down in my head. It may be a little ADHD. I know I've got GCD because I keep writing country songs. I can't. So I'm working on that. But anyway, if we can have that agreement, are you okay with that?
Yeah, sounds
Okay,
good.
great. And again, if you have a question, hang on to it. So where to begin? Well, I'm not going to do a whole lot of bio background, but I grew up in Southern California, and I dreamed of going to Europe. I mean, ever since I was a kid, National Geographic. Well, the Wild Kingdom was exciting, and the Magic Kingdom was exciting, but the National Geographic, I wanted to go other places. I felt, I didn't feel like I fit in here. And I was really comforted. I grew up in the suburbs, a little bedroom community called Arcadia. Some of you might have heard of it. The actual slogan is Community of Homes. Isn't that exciting for a teenager? They built the mall. That was exciting in the 70s. And I read an interview with David Bowie some years back, and they asked him, what was your motivation for making music? And he said, to meet girls and get out of the suburbs. I'm like, yes! So, common ground. Okay, so, and I wanted to go for a very, very long time. It took me a long time to get there. And I made a lot of errors, or I should say, learning experiences along the way. So I'm going to be sharing basically my story and the things I've picked up, my opinions about them. I don't hold anything I'm saying to be true in the big T way. I don't actually believe in any big T's, just small T's. So I've got mine, you've got yours, and we'll just find a place to meet in the middle. So, and I'm curious to hear, because I'm sure there are different experiences. The focus tonight is on Europe. First, I want to find out who's in the room. So on a just a basic level, how many people here are songwriters but not performers? Very good, my people. Okay, so I guess it's another conversation about pitching songs and all that. And that's another thing I do. I'm doing for the Berkeley School in November. They're a bit more focused on pitching, at least the group I'm talking to. Okay, and of the performers who are here, how many have already been overseas touring? Okay, so about a fourth. Okay, great. You're gonna have lots to tell us after. Okay, so I'm gonna start with dispelling some of the myths that I grew up feeding on and have found others feeding on. And actually explore, not necessarily dispel, but define and explore. And I imagine you'll have some that I don't have on my list. The first one that I heard growing up all the time as people bemoaned the state of the music industry. People have been bemoaning the state of the music industry since I realized there was a music industry. Funny thing is, music keeps happening. I keep reading these articles. I read another one today by, let's just say, elderly former rock stars, talking about how they've taken away the reason to write music. I'm like, really? It's about the money? Really? You know? Okay. I mean, let's make sure we're paid when we can, but for me it's not about the money. It's about the experience. So one of the myths was Europe has more respect for art and the artist. Anybody heard that one? Art's more respected in Europe. It's true. in a very global, generic sense, because first of all, Europe is not a country, which I've had to inform some of my American friends. It's a lot of different countries, it's a little mean to say that, but actually it's almost true. It's many different countries with many different cultures, and yet, one of the reasons, and this is not America bashing, this is the fact that America is a very young country, and European countries are quite old. So they've had longer to evolve a respect and appreciation for the arts. That's my take on it. I live in Denmark. I've lived there now 11 years. I've been living there really kind of 20 years, but always within the visa shuffle, And that country's over 1,000 years as a country. I mean, and they were the warring Vikings. They went from one of the bloodiest raiding crowds to these peaceful, happiest people on earth, according to Oprah. So, and they're pretty happy, and they're pretty peaceful, and they got a great social system. And I wouldn't have a child if I lived here. Beautiful 7-year-old over there, and I wouldn't have said yes over here, just for cost factors. So you see how I digress? That's why it's very dangerous to interrupt me. I can interrupt me. So that myth happens to be, I think in general it is true. And my other theory about that, which is relevant to our conversation, I hope, is not just the age of the cultures, but the fact that we're sitting in the country, and again, for better or worse, that one of our main exports is entertainment. So we are the industry that's pushing. I mean, okay, the Beatles came from England and Led Zeppelin and all that, but I mean, for the last many decades, it's the U.S. that's been informing and feeding the rest of the world. And because of that, and certainly growing up in Los Angeles or New York or some of these music capitals, there's such a focus on industry, on you're a songwriter, what have you written? Do I know anything you've written? Which is a valid question, but over there, they'll say, not all the time, but people will say, oh, where can I hear your music? Slightly different take, So I think it is true because of location and cultural traditions. Next myth or ideal: it pays better, or you can make more money in Europe. That one I need to qualify a little bit more, and then that's when we start to break down the countries. It just so happens when I fell in love with a Danish girl she wasn't a girl, young woman, in the mid-90s. I met her in Dublin. I followed her home. We were both songwriters, and we started to figure out where we could live, where we could make a living playing music. I found out that Denmark was the fairy kingdom of songwriters. It was amazing. I actually played one song live on the radio, and I received 2 years later. I received a check from ASCAP that was more than I'd earned for all the years that I'd played. Up to that point, releasing 3 singles, 2 albums, charting on college radio, which of course we all know doesn't pay, but also KROQ, KLOS. Yeah. So I still have my original ASCAP check for $1.89. It's worth more to save, So it was a real eye-opener because the system in Denmark, and also though in Sweden and Norway, there's a transparency that doesn't exist in the U.S. I could never get anybody to explain how the money was allocated to my songs that were being played when I was an ASCAP member. I still am an ASCAP member for North America. But I would get a list of songs, and these were songs I'd written, but some of them I knew I hadn't played at all, but I'd registered them, and I got like $11 on that song. Wow, I never played it. That's interesting. How'd that happen? And then this one that I was out playing and reporting like 50 shows, I got $2. That's interesting. So the whole monkeys with typewriters theory showed up. In Denmark, everything gets reported, and everything can be checked, and you get paid for everything. So live performance, you get paid. Radio, you get paid. It's not a sample of the radio. It's not who's got the hit. It's you were played, and therefore you are paid. That kind of pay to play I like. And it's true in, again, I don't know all the countries, but it's certainly true in the Netherlands, in Sweden, in the Scandinavian countries are pretty tight. Also Iceland, the Scayan countries, as they call them, Ireland as well. And I'm pretty sure they're pretty good in Britain as well. So if you're doing the same thing as you're doing here, if you're, say, playing 70 shows a year, I realize that's not that'd be a hell of a tour. 70 shows, you'd be over there for a year. Actually, that's not a very good tour. You need more. You need a better booking agent. My first tour, I did 150 dates in Europe. I didn't have a home. I was just on the road. I don't necessarily recommend that. There can be a lot of burnout involved, but it was an interesting experience. But if you're playing like 70 shows in the States and you're playing those same type of rooms in most countries in Europe, you will earn significantly more than you will here. That's been my experience. Qualifier to that, it's changing. It's, things don't stay the same. It's good to embrace change. So even when you don't like the change. So the rates have gone down in the countries where I've been touring. There have been economic realities and adjustments and privatization. So the it's not about the money, but it is when you're trying to make a living on it. So when the rates are drastically dropped for radio, They're going to subscription services, cable radio, things are dropping. Also the live club dates. And then of course CD sales. Do you remember CD sales? I know, I'm an old guy, so CD sales, yeah. Not a whole lot of that going on anymore. So the touring model has changed just in the last few years that I've been touring. I was just on, in the last 6 weeks, I have played in Greenland, Italy, Estonia, Germany, Denmark. Yes. And now I'm here for 10 days and then I go somewhere next. And the CD sales were just about non-existent. So that's something to be, and that didn't used to be the case. When CD sales sort of were dying here, it was like, I remember going out on the folk circuit, the singer-songwriter circuit in 1997. I went out, I had left my job at the National Academy of Songwriters, and I had said, I'm going to do this, and I did my 150 dates. I had a new CD, and I was able to sort of count on at least 3 or 4 CDs at like a coffee house gig, sort of on an average. And when that started to dry up here, I could still count on that in Europe. Also because there is one advantage that you have as the American, or as the person from somewhere else. You're the person from somewhere else. So there's a little bit of that, oh, they're not going to be here next week, but let's get their CD. That's an advantage to play up to the hilt. Also the fact that if you're writing in English, you just happen to be, got the lotto card, you have the international language. So, although probably it's moving towards probably Chinese eventually, the numbers balance out. Actually, there's an Indochina thing coming, but probably not in my lifetime. So English has been really helpful, and because a lot of the people in these different countries are writing in English, or interested in English. So that's an advantage. But still, the CD sales have dropped. One note about being the American, it's been a pro and a con for me. It's been helpful, and yet I found out I needed to tone down my enthusiasm in some countries because there's more of a, well, it depends on the culture. But for example, I toured in Ireland the first time, and I was hosted by a family to come to dinner, and oh, that's lovely. They said, oh, Brett, you're a songwriter, and I'm going to do a terrible Irish accent. Oh, it's lovely, you're here, and play us a song. And oh, thanks, I'm feeling kind of special. When I play a song. Oh, that's lovely, it's a lovely song. All right, Sarah, sing us a song. It's like the 8-year-old kid there, and she sings, kind of lovely voice. Oh, that's what. All right, Jimmy, sing us a song. And they went around the table, and it didn't matter whether people were singers or not. Everyone sang. So there's that culture of celebrating art, and that it's a part of who you are, and part of it, it belongs to everyone. So it's a really beautiful thing. Whereas I found here, again, industry focus, people start saying, oh, I don't know if you can sell that voice. There's the whole, I kept continually remind people there's music, and then there's industry. It's not the industry of music. It's the music industry. And it's a choice to take your music and go into the industry. And so I want to talk about the choice of going to tour. So we talked about the myth of more respect for artists, which there's some truth to it. Pays better, depends. On average, if you're coming over, for instance, I can only talk about a few scenes that I'm doing right now. And one thing I say to every American who wants to come over, because a lot of them want to come over, not that many do, I tell them to look at their first tour as a recon, an investment and a recon. I don't use a lot of military terms, but I like reconnaissance. It's good. You're going in and you're figuring out, well, first of all, go somewhere you really want to go, so it's a good trip. I mean, really, because you're, I hope otherwise, but you're probably not going to cover your costs. It's just, I mean, I'm not saying don't shoot for the moon, but probably not. Now, the exceptions would be if you, of course, get invited to go on a tour, or there's something you find through the various, the Sonic bids, or all these things are out there. There are ways in, but I'm saying if you're doing this on your own, and you decide I want to tour Europe and I want to see where I might, I want to come to Denmark, you will probably not get the ticket back the first time. So it's an investment. And then from there, one of the things I learned the hard way is not to overextend. like 8 countries, you know, in 1 year, and then am I going to go back to all 8 countries next year? You know, I was sort of, I had the classic, I waited 20 years to do this, I'm bursting, and I went out and exploded, you know, everywhere, and it didn't, I mean, it made sense on some hopefully higher level, but it didn't make a lot of sense economically. So I was spread too far out. Ways of going over. I want to get into some practical stuff. How does one book a tour in Europe? Here's a good one. Well, again, if you don't have a booking agent, first of all, I would not advise that you go looking for a booking agent in Europe because you have nothing to offer them. I'm sorry to say it that way. It sounds harsh. Of course, you have something to offer them, but in their market, you're unknown, and so unless something amazing is happening with you, and I think everyone's art is amazing and everyone has an audience, so it's not about judging where anybody is. I don't know where anybody is other than in this room. The reality is, I mean, if someone writes to me, and I get people writing to me all the time and say, hey, you know, I see you're playing, and you know, could you help us get some gigs? And you know, I'll do what I can, but there are hours and hours and hours invested in getting a new person a booking. And so if there's very little money in it at that level, and then you say, oh, I'll give you 20%. Well, 20% of very little is very little. so it doesn't really make sense. So what I developed, my way of doing this, that's worked for me over the years, is I developed, my definition is, rather than doing vertical marketing, I do horizontal or networking. I kept at first, growing up here and thinking about, I got to get a record deal. And I mean, I would not talk about all the money spent on the packages to Capitol Records and Warner and all the lovely rejection letters. You know, all that sort of trying to shoot the golden arrow through the tower, the ivory tower. And boy, if it just hits on the right person's desk, it's all going to change. Thank you, Rolling Stone. Myth and mythos. The reality is my tours, my bookings, my better bookings, my windows into other opportunity, my co-writes, my film, my TV placements, the majority of that have happened because of horizontal networking. In other words, like this room is your network. Like if everybody could sit down and take, I don't know, kind of like speed dating, you know, 10 minutes with each other, and it's all about who do you know that might have any kind of connection to touring in Europe. There's a wealth of information in here, I'm sure. Even if we had a room of people who've never toured in Europe. Because the songwriting community is still a very small world. And so I'm going to give you a few tips on how to do some horizontal marketing. When I started out with it, it was MySpace, which is kind of no space now, but lost in space. So Reverb Nation is one of them. I'll show you. I'll just tell you how I use a few things, and you just decide. These are just, I'm going to throw stuff out fast and furious here. What I'll do if I want to go to a new place, let's say I want to go and play in Rome. I've always wanted to go to Rome. So I will, pardon the pun, Rome on Reverb Nation, and I will use their database to find artists based in Rome who are in the same category as me. So I'd say singer-songwriter or folk pop or alt Americana or whatever, the latest, you know, double latte with mocha, you know, whatever. Just as long as it works in the algorithm and gives me that list of those artists. And then I'll start listening to those artists, looking for people whose work is interesting to me. But what I'm really doing, that's a secondary thing, actually. Okay, let's tell the truth. I'm looking at their tour schedule. Because we don't have to vibe artistically. I want to get their gigs. I want to have access to their, I want to at least have contact to their gigs. Now, if this sounds predatory, let me put a big qualifier on it. It is, reciprocity is key to effective networking. I taught networking workshops and was the head of a networking organization in the 80s, and there was that word became a little tainted. Because it was sort of about a little usury, you know. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about identifying people with whom you have a common interest, and before you write to them and ask for something, think about what can I offer. So my email to these artists would be like this: hey, checked you out. I'm, you know, first you fan them. I just checked out your stuff. We seem to be doing a similar style of music. I'm based here, like I would say I'm based in Copenhagen, or before I'm based in Los Angeles. I don't know if you ever tour over here, but if so, I'd be happy to do what I can. And I'm interested in coming to Rome. And so I wonder if we might be able to be of mutual assistance to each other. So it's a nice, warm, fuzzy, and you better mean it, opening. And it's not cold calling. It's kind of a lukewarm calling. I was in sales for a long time. Well, I'm a songwriter and a performer. I'm still in sales. But the idea of cold calls versus warm, and the reciprocity is really key because it's a small community, really. And you're going to meet a lot of folks that are the ones who stay in. You're going to keep meeting. So, and I find that people, they want to help. You know, I have that. Maybe I'm naive, but I think people deep down they want to help. But so being able to offer them something first, and not to overpromise, but just to say, look, I could tell you the five good clubs to play, the 5 to stay away from in Los Angeles. That's valuable to someone because their dream. I'll tell you about all of us sitting here dreaming about going to Europe. Guess what they're dreaming of? Playing in the U.S. They all want to come over here. The ones writing in English, you know. I have friends who think they all want to live here. So, no, actually, they're happy over there. Two. There are other places that are nice to live, but they do want to come over and tour to see if they're writing in English. Just often the part of it is to see if the audiences resonate with their work. You know, will people get what I'm doing? And there's a lot of cross culture. When Rob mentioned writing with Mads Langer, I mean, I know there's certainly from Denmark and the songwriters guilds there. They have a very good structural system for supporting our writers. And I actually helped organize some of those trips when I was first over there in the late 90s, looking for things to do that they would pay me for so I could stay over there. And so I set up with all my old NAS contacts, old board of directors and all that. I was bringing writers over to professionally write with them. And yeah, it was a good thing for both parties. So Reverb Nation, that's one of them. Of course, Facebook, because with all these music pages out there. Here's how that works. Some of you, I'm sure, are more versed in how to navigate and find your way through all this stuff. But for me, this was news to me recently. I was thinking, how do I find musicians who I might have friended, but you know, like I want to go to Italy. Who do I know in Italy that's a musician? How am I going to find that? Do I have to scroll through 5,000? And then my second profile, 5,000? No, I have 3 profiles, but I'm not at 10,000 yet. So I realized if I set my current city to Rome, Italy, and then I say, look for people, friends of mine who are in my current city. Full list of just people from Rome. That's one's worth the price of admission, huh? And if you don't want to freak your family out, like you moved to Rome, you didn't tell us. You put a private. When you change it, you just make it private so no one sees you. So I've lived in several cities in the last few weeks as I've been getting ready to tour in places like Estonia and Germany, looking for different places to gig. So that's one way. That's working with your current list. But if you find even one artist who is, if you go out and find, I don't know, again, you could probably just look for general reference for, say, Rome, Italy. And it'll ask Facebook to tell you everything it's got. And it'll start popping up, you know, after it says there's no one named Rome, Italy, other suggestions, and then it'll start popping up conversations where that was mentioned, and eventually you'll find an artist. And then if you like that artist's page, Facebook will give you a lot of other suggested artists you might also like. They're probably from Rome or parts of Italy. So this is, I'm a marketing nerd, so I love this stuff. And I'm a bit of an insomniac, so at 4 in the morning, this is fascinating stuff to do. So that's another one. I wanted to check, I said Reverb Nation, I said Facebook, and I had one other one that said, oh, well, to a lesser degree, at least because I don't understand it anymore, some of you may. SoundCloud is another one, although I'm not sure how to navigate that. Twitter, of course, I mean the social media, Instagram. Instagram's good. I realized recently, because a friend of mine is a social media marketing professor, and I said, I've known you a long time, I'm actually going to listen to you now. And what do I do? And he goes, just follow everyone on Twitter until they tell you you can't follow anybody, you know? And you just start getting in these feeds, and then you start, and then scanning it and just looking, and occasionally something pops up and I go, oh, Nashville, because my focus is on going there and let's say, you know, summer next year. So, yeah, and I'm going to back up now. Defining, I talked about going to Europe as a sort of a recon, first time over. Define as much as possible, take your dream, and I don't want to dispel anyone's dream, but this kind of someday isle, the island that everyone lives on and no one ever visits, someday isle. That's Wayne Dyer, I didn't write that, from the 80s. But define it as much as possible, distill it down, so that when you go to find these contacts, when you go to share your dream and try to network with people, you can target it and be as clear as possible. I'm, because of my positions currently in Denmark or the history there, I founded the Copenhagen Songwriters Festival 8 years ago. So a lot of people send me requests, you know, hey, I see that you do the festival. You know, these kind of warm, fuzzy letters that they send. Unfortunately, you know, I'm busy, we're all busy, and I also have that desire to help people. So if someone says, hey, I know you're busy, wonderful opening line. Wonderful for someone you don't know and you're about to ask something of. You know, I know you're busy, and I'm sure you get a lot of these requests. Very good, you took the class, all right. Even if I know they took the class, it still shows an awareness. And I'm planning a tour where I'm thinking of coming over to Denmark in summer of 2017, and I wonder where I could get some information about the scene. Okay, that's general, but it's specific enough. It gives a time frame that I don't have to answer it right away, but I can eventually send some information. A lot of the mails say, hey, looks like you're doing a lot of cool stuff in Denmark. Could you let me know how I can get a booking agent and, you know, make enough money to, you know, make it worth my while to come over? Wow, could you answer that for me? It's like, I mean, it's so vague and it's so big, and I'm like, I don't even know you. I mean, this is so vague and big that if a friend asked me this, I'd be like, dude, what? No, come on, give me something. You know, like, help me with this. So defining, being very clear about what you want, and also if you're thinking you really want to go to Europe, I would say plan a year in advance. That's a minimum, in my opinion. I mean, can you do it in less time? Sure you can. And again, this is not about if someone, you know, calls you up and says, hey, this tour opened up, you want to join? No, Brett Perkins says I should wait a year. No. Do not follow that advice. It's a general guideline that notwithstanding any major opportunity that opens up, a year. Why is that? Well, in my experience, and again, I don't know all the countries and all the codes, but generally the venues that you may or may not be able to get in on book 6 months ahead. In spring, they're booking the fall. So thinking that. And you're unknown, so you're going to be at the end of their booking cycle. They're going to book the known acts, the kind of known acts, and then you're sort of the spice, you know, something interesting. So, I mean, the opening act or something like that. So right around end of April, middle of May is when they're finishing their booking and open to booking someone new in the fall. So when do I start contacting them? Not at that point. I start contacting them around February. And there's a whole science to that. Just be polite. That's as simple as I can put it. Be polite and respect that people are really busy. You know, mails that say, you know, this is my third mail. And I go, bad start. You know, yeah, it's your third mail. I don't work for you. It could be your last mail. I could solve your problem right now. Because these people are inundated, you know, and being a gatekeeper is, I don't like the term, but being someone on the other side for a few years now, as well as being a performer, I've developed a lot of empathy. It tends to be true if you walk in anybody's shoes for a while. But they're getting inundated with so much. But 6 months. Festivals, if you're thinking about festivals, and that's another kind of part of the myth. Oh, if I could just get on the festivals, look amazing, and they are. If I could just get on a festival, it would raise my profile, and it would. You're not known to them again, so I'm not saying that should kill the joy of, you know, going for it, but just remember where that kind of hierarchy in their mind before they know you, before they hear your CD and are blown away and say, oh my God, you've got to be on our, and that also can happen. It does, you know, because music's so subjective and it's so special, and I don't know. I mean, we just finished booking the Copenhagen Festival. We're a small festival, 3 stages running for 3 days and 2 nights of 1 stage. And so we have 80 spots. And this year there were over 300 people who submitted. And we, of course, went with known ones. You know, there's a certain thing. We need to sell tickets, so we need this many. And then there was a little window of like, oh, let's do some kind of cool stuff that people we've never heard of, but they're just too interesting to not bring them over. And, you know, that was probably about 15 of the 80 spots, which I think is a pretty good ratio for a small festival. Because we're all songwriters on the board, you know, I mean, we're all volunteers. It was a, I was going to say it was a for-profit festival, but I never made any money, so I turned it into a non-profit because I thought, well, what the hell, I'm already a non-profit, let's share the pain. So we all work as volunteers, and it's a wonderful experience. But festivals 1 year, they're planning a year ahead. And they're a lot of work to get in. So when I work with people on establishing a schedule, like how do we all use our time? You know, we don't have, most of us don't have unlimited resources. We're all working in a 24-hour time frame, and we have a certain amount of money and time and energy that we can put towards this. So again, getting as clear as possible about what it is. Touring Europe is a beautiful, warm, fuzzy idea. So what does that mean? You know, well, actually, if I negotiated with my family and my job, and I put my education on hold, I could go for 18 days in this window. You know, I mean, and that's what we all deal with. I mean, to some degree. I mean, we got to pay our bills, and we've got other relationships, and or maybe it's your dog has to be in the kennel. I don't know, that's too long for the dog. You know, whatever it is, and to define that, and then to advance that a year and say, okay, and now it's going to take a while to book anything. If I'm going to do this horizontal marketing, if I'm going to, if festival is my main goal, festival is going to be the most work for the least return because they are the furthest up the flagpole, so everybody's firing at that spot. I'm not saying don't go for it. If that's what you really want, then go for it. But if you're sort of going, well, I'll try some festivals, and I'll try some venues, and I'll see if I can get gigs here, and that kind of scatter approach is very time-consuming. Can be a bit exhausting. And as someone who, again, I'm not a booking agent, I'm a consultant for artists, but I try and help, you know. And I just went through one of these with I'm sure she's a lovely person, a songwriter who was, you know, because we had a common friend, and so I thought, okay, so-and-so said, sure, I will, and, you know, and here you can try this person, this person. Well, I'm thinking my dates might have changed, so maybe could you check this? Okay, so I was wondering if you knew about, you know, it was just starting like, whoo, and then I found out she didn't have a tour plan. She was just fishing. And I was like, you know, stocking the pond with my time. And she would go, not big enough, throw it back. Okay, let's try another one. You know, it's on me to have understood that and been clear about it sooner. But as clear as you can be with those goals. So if any of you wrote to me and said, hey, you mentioned the Copenhagen Songwriters Festival, I'm interested. I could say, oh, January 1st, 2017, this is true. The portal will open on the website. It's free to submit, and you could submit to be considered from January 1st until April 1st. And then we could talk further about, you know, is there any money in it?
That would be for the one in 18?
17. We open in January, and we close in April, and we announce who's booked in May.
And when is it actually?
You know, it's in the end of August. Yeah, it's in week 35. So, and some festivals have a even shorter window. Some of them, again, are booking a year ahead. Again, we're a small festival. We're all volunteer run. If you're pitching to the Roskilde Festival in Denmark, that's more of a 2 or 3 year, you know, ramp up. And again, good luck if you're unknown. I mean, you know, they're booking McCartney and Dylan, and then a bunch of Danish bands who are cool to these masses of people who come to hear them. Switch back. If you said that you want to, if you're looking, for example, let's say that you're in the room. I'm trying to, you know, fire a wide shot here, and then the questions hopefully will lead us to more defined answers. If you're interested in, like, I just want to go over and see where it might work. So where's an active scene? I can tell you what, in my experience right now, are the most active songwriter scenes. So places you could consider for your holiday. And a few tips about that. Copenhagen. I've lived there, as I said, now almost 20 years and officially 11 years. When I moved there was no scene. Now it is one of the most thriving scenes in Europe. It's the most, Berlin's got more going on, but it's spread out. Copenhagen's well, my Danish friends don't like it, but I say it's a sweet little town. Because I grew up in Los Angeles, so to me, 1.5 million people, that's a sweet little town. And everybody's on bikes, so it's like in New York, you see each other all the time on the metro or on the bikes. So it's very hyggelig, as the Danes say, which means cozy plus. So you can come in any week and play 5 showcases if you just maybe 8 weeks in advance. It's that fluid. There's the Listening Room Open Stage, which I founded there 10 years ago and is now run. I turned that into a nonprofit too. Same story. You noticing the theme here? Okay. And it's a group that runs it called the Listening Roomies. Very sweet people. And you can. It's an open stage. You can just show up, but you can also book a feature spot. These are unpaid. That's an unpaid show. Currently, there are 2 showcases during the week. This is just to give you an example, where you can get, on one of them you can get 500 kroner, which right now means about $100. And on the second one, you can also get 500 kroner, $100, reimbursement for your travel receipt, if it is recent, related to the show. So if someone's coming in from Berlin, hey, EasyJet, I can pay my ticket and crash on a friend's place, and they can kind of break even and have themselves a good old time. Coming from Los Angeles, that's something else. So again, it's an investment. Amsterdam, my partner in life and music is French. She's from Paris, but she lives in Amsterdam. So we do a lot of flying and gigging, and that's a much bigger city. It's got a great songwriting vibe thing going on. There are a couple of radio programs that are always interested in new people. They don't pay, but they're cool radio. And then there are quite a few live music showcases. But again, as I mentioned earlier, the economies on those have drastically altered. When I toured in 1997, I had a booking agent over there through my friends Bright Blue Gorilla, originally from California as well. They were living there, and on average I was getting maybe 150 euros a show because I had a booking agent for original music, which I was astounded. I mean, just being paid to play my own songs. I'm like, really? You do that here? It's okay. And now I just plugged a couple of friends into showcases, and so far the top I've seen is 75 euros for a set. If you can string enough of those together, you start to get something around some economy. Again, if you can cover your meals while you're there and just figure your travel, that'd be cool. It's recon. It's going over. It's seeing who you want to work with. In my opinion, this is the way to do it. And then so you can come back and build on it. Berlin has a quite active scene. Very little money there. I just played Berlin Guitars, which has been a regular gig for me for 10 years. And once a year, he favors Americans because he's an American. And walked out with 150 euros. I split the bill with another artist because attendance, is kind of, I mean, I was there with Tom Kimmel a few years ago. We sold the place out and walked out with like 300 each. Now it's 150. So, things are changing. Funny, the prices are going up though. I might have to turn myself into a nonprofit.
There you go.
Dublin, Ireland, a place that appeals to a lot of people. Dublin is very obviously, Ireland's probably one of the most musically active countries. Economy, not so good. And this is where we get into one other very important practical thing with touring. If you come and play in Denmark, you do not need a work permit, and you will not be taxed on the money you make. What an enlightened place to live. No wonder they're the happiest people on the planet.
Amen.
The Swedes were just named those who do the least harm. So it's good to have a little competition in that way, right? I don't know who names these probably companies. So work permits, Denmark, no problem. Netherlands, I believe, no problem. Ireland, technically you should have a work permit, but they don't seem to be that concerned, because if you've got a guitar, they usually like you. Kind of smile. But if you're going through customs and they say, are you playing any paid gigs, and you say yes, they're going to ask you for a work permit. And I am not, because we're on video, I'm not advocating that you should misrepresent yourself in any way. I just want to be clear about that. This is Brett Perkins for the England. You better have a work permit, and you better look really honest. And that is a tough place. They pull. I mean, I got pulled over, and I wasn't staying. I'm like, I'm not even leaving your airport. I'm en route to Denmark. You still look suspicious. They were just. It's. I don't know. The British, the whole thing, like the Empire that whispers. No, got a whole thing. Got to prove. But it's a very tough place, whereas you got, and it's the same in the U.S. for the Europeans coming over. Any songwriter, I do these listening room retreats around the world, and I do, well, I'm leading one starting tomorrow in Idlewild. It's the first year with Dan Byrne as a special guest. I don't have any Europeans on this one, but I also, every January in Ben Lomond, and next year starting again in Big Sur. And on average, I'll have 50% participants from European countries. And I have to tell all of them that, well, first of all, they're not playing any paid gigs. So that's easy because they're in America. Because, well, that's not what the retreat's focused on. We go around to all the showcase scenes so they can play, rather than trying to, hustle to get one gig that they get paid. But I believe, I don't know this because I am not an attorney, but I believe even if you're playing free shows, you still have to have a special permit to play in America. I think that's how it goes. Wow. And the latest that I've heard is you get turned down as often as you get okayed. The whole post 9/11 paranoia, because the artists are really at the core of all of that. So, yeah, it just is the way it is. So I don't advise them, but I tell people coming to the workshop, you're coming to a workshop. That's it. You have a guitar because you're coming to a workshop. Iceland, I don't believe you need a work permit. Basically, Scandinavia is the enlightened section of Europe as far as work permits and things. I don't know about Italy. I wouldn't want to ask. I mean, you don't want to get into the governmental systems in certain countries. Like this. Germany, probably you need a work permit. Having said that, I've never asked for one. Oh, but I'm an EU. I'm a permanent resident, so maybe I started now. But that only happened 2 years ago, so I probably won't show this video in German. But it's very important to make sure you've got the papers, or at least know when you're going in. So if you want to come over and take the money home with you, Scandinavia, Netherlands. Okay. I'm going to check on time. See how we do. Oh, hey, it's 8:29. How nice. Okay, I'm just going to probably talk for 5 more minutes, and I'm going to open it up to questions. And I want to just check my notes. See if I missed anything. Tips, personal marketing, very good. Be specific, yes. Don't overextend. Radio press promotion. I already talked about CDs that they're not really selling. I don't know. What I've found is the 40 and older crowd still buys CDs because they still own a CD player because they're embarrassed to go in and say, I don't know how to download things. And there is a return to vinyl, actually. There's a huge vinyl resurgence. So, figure putting that in your suitcase and carrying on to it. Download cards, I don't think anybody knows what to do with those. They're just like, oh, they're free. They just take them, I've seen people that are cold piles just leave, because it just looks like a little nothing. And I don't want to hand 10 euros for a little nothing, even though it's a something. But is it? It's just, I don't know. It doesn't seem to translate over there. I look at CDs as business cards, promotional items, basically. That's my, it just makes me feel better about not selling them. But here's one thing, here's a little touring tip that's worked really well for me, especially with the decline of people buying CDs. I now have a donation-based CD offer. I'm carrying CDs, I have a large collection, I'd be happy to share. I guess CDs sell for anywhere between 10 and 15 euros here in Germany. I know some of you didn't come in planning to, buy a CD. I'm new to you. I feel I've been paid by your attention and the venue, and you're paying to come in, and that's all wonderful. But I would really love all of you to go home with my CD. And I know that's not going to happen if I ask you for 15 euros. So just put whatever you can or you wish in the bowl and take a CD. And I have, on average, earned more in sales than if I sold them for the fixed price. It's a funny thing. I mean, someone will put embarrassingly 50 whatever it is, 50 cents, and take one and feel guilty about it, and yet others will put in 20 or 25 because they can. It's kind of the church thing, passing the plate. People are all watching. Something going on there, but they don't have that hang up there either so much. But I actually had a young guy one time in Cambridge. I was playing this college town, university town, I should say, and he was very drunk and very enthusiastic. And I announced this thing, and he said, "Oh, I feel terrible." So now I'm going to do the bad English accent. I've only got, this sounds more like Scottish now. I've only got a pound and a half, and but I really want your CD, but I've only got a pound and a half, and I could buy a pint with that, but I really want your CD. And I swear he was drunk. This went on. The two of them had an incredible conversation, and I just watched and watched and watched, and finally I'm like, he's only. He goes, "Oh, all right," and he gives me the pound 50. And I hand him the CD, and I go, "Come here, I'm going to buy you a beer." And that was fun. So it all worked out, But it is a way. There's something about that. If it's like a retail item, people go, "Oh, I already paid." They think of it another way. I already paid 15 to walk in here. I'm not going to do that. But if it's like, okay, this is probably a little. No, it sounds sexist. I'm listening to it in my head. No, it's true. What I've observed, if there's a couple there, it tends to be the woman who says, "Oh, come on, you cheapskate," and gets the guy to donate a little more, or them of their money together. It just tends to be true, whether they're supporting a female or a male artist. It gets bumped up. It just works out. So I highly recommend it because we're not selling them out there anymore. Okay, did I have any last tip? I think I'm at the end of my tip list, so sharpen up those questions. And we're going to markets, just double checking. Yeah, that's it. Let's go to Q&A. Okay, here's how I'd like to do it. I will do this so I can see you well, and I will ask you to raise your hands, and then I will call upon you. Just like, somebody already got their hand up. She's been doing this a while. Okay, and I will ask you to as much as possible, place your question in the form of a question. You're not telling your story and leading to something, but actually, we're songwriters, so we actually being clear and concise is a good practice. And if I feel it's not a question, I may actually say, "Is there a question?" So we'll get there. So yes, question.
About the work permits, is that the same as a visa? Like if you're already a citizen, do you still need to get the work permit?
EU.
Like an EU citizen?
EU, yeah. Again, I'm not well versed in that. I haven't had to deal with it thus far for various reasons, but I don't know actually. I think it's a country by country question, and there are, fortunately with Google and embassy websites, you can check and say if you're, I don't know, are you a European?
Irish citizen, yeah.
Irish citizen, okay. I don't think you do. Well, so you're saying if you went to England or another.
Yeah, if I went to Ireland or Germany, would I have to get the work permit as well? Is that different?
Boy, that's
from
a good
visa?
question.
I know I don't need a visa.
No, I don't. I do not know the answer to that. But I'm sure it's online.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, John.
Assuming you're, as you say, investing in your first tour, going over, from the States, and you go in assuming that you're not going to make any money. What would you? I mean, I know it varies from country to country and everything, but just as a kind of a general ballpark, what would you say? To get there and back and survive for, 2 or 3 weeks. What kind of
Good
money?
question. Yeah. It's actually, there's several parts to answer. One is pick the season that's not high season, maybe very obvious, but don't go in the summer. For a couple reasons. One, there are fewer gigs in the summer. Europeans take summer seriously. You know, it's like, thank God the sun is finally here. In Denmark, where it's rainy and cold for 10 months of the year, and that's summer. I mean, the sun comes out, I just said we run outside. Wow, I've been there 10 years, I'm acclimating. I mean, literally, when it's 47 degrees out and it's sunny, I'm like, yes, spring! You know, when I'm from California, I'd be like, oh, it's terribly cold. So off season. I just flew over from Europe to the States. Buy as far in advance on your ticket as possible. I bought 2 months out and I paid $500 for a ticket round trip.
Oh, I'm sorry.
From Copenhagen through Frankfurt to here. So it's possible, and there are. I would also sign up on a few of these. Sign up on all the airlines' newsletters. You know, it's an information thing. It's so much about like Norwegian had some specials where they were, you know, we're blowing out. We've announced a route from San Francisco, so for a whole period you could buy, and if you bought far in advance because they're trying to bring in money, you could buy.
But like for a whole tour, and not just airfare.
Cost, well, that's
you know.
The first part is the airfare. Second is couch surfing. If you're aware of couch surfing, or, yeah. Most of that happens unofficially, but a lot of songwriters will be willing to put someone else up. So this gets back to that horizontal marketing, saying I'm thinking of coming over, and I will be happy to put you up if you come over, you know, if you can or not, or put up with you, depending on who you're talking to. So couch surfing has been helpful. The hostels are quite inexpensive. Certainly, the cheaper places to tour, for example, Denmark's one of the most expensive places.
Oh.
Just high standard of living and high expense. Berlin, one of the cheapest cities. Amsterdam, very cheap. I mean, I go between Copenhagen and Amsterdam. I'm a coffee drinker. I buy my coffee in Amsterdam because it is two-thirds less.
Wow.
I mean, literally, like instead of $10, I'm paying like $3. So I fill my suitcase. I say I'm there for love, but I'm there for the coffee. And I bring back a lot in the suitcase. There was John, let me see if there's one more bit, and I'm going to hit you. So I can't really round it into a figure because it depends how many days and all that. But I had Michael McNevin over recently, a songwriter from California who's been threatening to tour for years. And he spent a year planning. And he was able to set up some house concerts. Now, house concerts are on the rise. That's a good thing. They didn't know what it was when I came there to Denmark 20 years ago, and now there are regular series and things. So again, research. I would spend more time researching home concerts because then you're unique. Then the home concert presenter is bringing in something special, culture, rather than you're not a name. How are you going to sell tickets for our festival? You're not a name in our town. Yeah, I don't know. I figure maybe. I mean, who's got it? But if you figured to spend a couple thousand and then just
That's what I thought.
yeah, a couple thousand is kind of a window. If you're going to go over for 2 weeks, or and why go over for less than 2 weeks? I mean, I'm only here for 12 days because I have a 7-year-old daughter who I miss, and I've been away so much, and I have a guilty daddy conscience, so I bought a short ticket. But okay, use and then whoever else. Sorry, my timer's.
Have you found, like if you've won a prize or anything, does it actually make a difference? I know you listed in your resume. And also, do DJs, I've heard that DJs will help you booking if they play your CD and like it. If it actually gets on the radio, you can use them as bookers.
Okay, I'll take those as a two-part question. I'll
Yeah.
give you two-part answers. Both as an artist and as decision maker, someone who gets a lot of packages,
Right.
Awards and quotes do make a difference. I would like to, in some ways I think, it doesn't make a difference,
Yeah.
but it does.
Yeah, sure.
We're media manipulated brains, so I see winner of third place in the Mid-Atlantic Songwriting Contest, and at least on some level I think this person is active, they're submitting their work, so I immediately the idea of amateur kind of goes away. The word amateur can sound harsh, but it's someone who's actively committed to pursuing something. And someone else has done the work for me and vetted this out of, I don't know, maybe there are only 10 people who applied, but out of several hundred, I think, this person has rated. So I'm going to listen to that package sooner. I'm predisposed to, now, if the hype is too high, I'm predisposed to be disappointed. You know the movie, everyone says, oh my God, you're going to be breaking down in tears in the first 5 minutes. I'm like, yeah, make me cry. so that can, and Dan Byrne, to mention Dan, I mean, when he got out of LA finally and got on the road, and he ended up being signed by Sony Works Group back in the late 90s. And The Guardian, San Francisco, was a Bay Area Guardian, front page of their entertainment section. The new Dylan, question mark,
Oh, God,
tanked
yeah.
his career.
Kiss it down.
Yeah, the new Dylan.
Never.
What were they thinking? I think they meant it in an enthusiastic way, and it
Right.
just,
Oh, of course, yeah.
because you can't. So when I said earlier about toning down the American, like not over the top, but yeah, one or two good quotes. And then now the second part about DJs booking, that's a pretty general. I don't know of any DJs who. I have never had a DJ help me get a gig that I can recall. It depends. There are radio promoters, and that's a whole other discussion. But there are
Right.
people you can hire to take your
Right.
CD around. I don't know that radio anymore. Well, it doesn't drive CD sales because we've already talked about that.
Okay.
I don't know that it helps with bookings, actually.
Huh.
Maybe if a local, like in Utrecht or Amsterdam, if the local person is excited about you and they're playing you, yeah, it's a small town, and their listeners are the ones who are putting on the showcases.
Right,
And so
yeah.
in that micro economy way, yes, or micro community. But if you I've achieved national airplay in Denmark, and yeah, maybe because I live there and I'm a
Right.
press hound, so they can't miss that I've been there for 10 years. So it may have gotten me some bookings, but it hasn't directly related to. So yeah, radio and reviews, all that stuff it's lovely to get a great review, but I'll tell you what, a lot of the stuff I thought was going to make the difference doesn't, and it's more about that personal networking and going ground level. If I could just get a couple more gigs and paid €100, I could stay another week, or I could come back. And that slow build.
Right.
My duo is now we've only been playing for 9 months. And in the first 6 months, we played everywhere for free because we were practicing basically on stage. And then we said, okay, let's start and I started pushing up. Now we only do the gigs, we only did the €50 gigs, and then the only €75 gigs. We just got our first €600 gig.
All right.
Now that's through contacts I've had for a long time, but in Denmark. But now I'm pushing us up there, and it's about positioning. My country band only plays festivals, and it only plays festivals where we get like 3,000 or more, because it's a band and it costs a lot. But that's I've been playing that one a long way.
Sure.
You can't just walk in and grab this. Sorry for taking so long to get used to it.
Thanks for being here. So I kind of have a two-part question. Some more touring in a general sense. What is the future of touring? And that second part is kind of adding in online, Facebook doing the live thing and so many live apps now.
Mhm.
It's almost like, why even tour when you can kind of bring that presence where you're at to everywhere in the world, at the same time?
Well, with the future of touring, I have no idea, because I don't know what the future is. But I will say that in my experience, even though I've talked about the income has gone down, I hope I'm not depressing anyone, because it just means becoming creative and about how you generate income. And I want to come back to that in a minute. I believe, even with all the apps and all the new stuff, and even with Spotify, and even with all this stuff, and is unfortunately true. The need for human contact, the need for bonding with an artist, the need to be moved by a human in the room, playing the instrument, connecting with the other people and resonating is more necessary than ever.
I agree.
Because we are more socially plugged in and more isolated than ever before, I think. So, I've got 5,000 friends I've never met. So I use Facebook as a marketing tool. So, if we're friends there, you're going to get bombarded. No, but I mean, it's another thing. So when I play to, like the listening room in Denmark, and there'll be a room of 30 or 40 people like we have tonight, and I mean it's powerful. People get transformed, and the retreats that I lead, and I'm not giving a commercial, but I can talk to anyone about them later. We spend a week co-writing, and then when we play a concert at the end of the week, and audiences come in, they're blown away. They're like, "Whoa! I want this thing," So I don't know what the future is in the economy of it. I think it's back to that grassroots. If I go into a room and I play a home concert, and I give an hour of songs, and again, this is a whole nother, but before you go to tour, make sure you've really done your work. So you're really, if you want people to pay attention. Forget whether you're getting $10 at the door or nothing. They are paying you with their attention. That is the most precious thing someone can give you, their attention. And you're beholden to them to give them something worth their attention. I don't mean trying to please everybody. I don't mean, I got to win over every audience or write for the radio or whatever. But if I'm going to ask somebody to listen to me for an hour, I better give them something for that hour, not just look at me, another song about me. So there needs to be that connection, or else it's not satisfying. Did I get both parts?
Not really the second part.
Second part. Say the second part again, because I had a point about it.
The part of embracing technology with touring.
Yeah, and I mean, there are people who are great at that, and it's an individual thing. People are doing amazing videos, iPhone videos. It's like, wow, and they're all over YouTube. And now I know that, Facebook, if you put a video in your Facebook post, it gets more activity. And there's people who are expert in that. It's not me, but use whatever makes sense for you. It's a big question for me. But I wanted to say about the economy, going back to tangential thought off your question. One of the ways that I found that I could make money as the money was going down on shows is I do workshops. I do talks. So I come in and say, you might go in and say, I'll give a 30-minute talk about the LA music scene, for example, since you're living here playing in the LA music scene. That you could sell to the unions, the songwriter unions, the clubs. They have educational funds. So, for example, on the festival, we're not paying any of the artists because they have this rule, either you pay everyone or no one. And yet there were 3 artists I really wanted on the festival because I knew they'd be good for the festival. So we got educational money, so I'm paying them educational money for the workshop, and then they're playing the gig for free. But they're getting paid, and they're getting paid more than if they played at the gig because the educational money is there. So there are different ways in. It's about being creative. I mean, if the money dries up, I once heard a hit songwriter tell me, one of the biggest hit writers of all time, the name will be withheld, and he really meant it. He didn't mean it in a negative way, but he said, if they take away all the money, there'll be no incentive for writing songs. And I thought, wow, you've been in that bubble too long.
Yeah.
Have you forgotten why you started writing songs? What, huh? And I'm an advocate for us getting paid, especially if somebody's earning on our work. That's where I draw the line. Like, you're selling more drinks because I'm playing, and this is exposure? I'm exposing my stupidity? Is that what I'm exposing? My timer again. There. Yeah, it's not about, it becomes about the money when you don't have any. It's really a bummer to be broken on tour. Done that, been there, not cool. Sold the t-shirt, couldn't afford it. Yeah, so finding different creative ways to earn, and that's an individual thing. I want to see if the question and then the question and the question. Yes.
Yeah, the question is about the other opportunities, like do the libraries have people to come in and play music, and the schools, for example?
Yes, and that's individual, not all libraries, not all schools, but that part of what I do is I guest speak, I do inspirational talks for youth at youth schools, these creative schools they have in Scandinavia, and I'll talk for an hour about self-expression and through songwriting, but it's really for this big group of like 100 students. And then I'll work with 8 or 10 or 12 of their students who want to write songs throughout the day. And something like that, there's fixed payment for that, and I can get about, I don't know, US dollars, the dollar's pretty healthy right now, about $500 for the day. Well, there are a lot of $500 gigs I can go out and do as a solo artist right now. So, yeah, and the libraries and some of the museums, and there's all this stuff, and if anything that's interactive with children, especially youth, if you can work with youth as far as writing songs, or if you can bring in, if you know how to deal with loops or any of the technology. I'm just showing you how little I know by saying loops because I couldn't think of anything else. Things to go, that has an opportunity for income. I pointed here, and then I pointed there, and then I see you in the back. I'm sorry, the lights. Yeah.
I'd like to share one observation and then ask a question, if I may. As far as going over for the first time anywhere, it's always, the first couple of times I left, I realized that it was best to tuck under my enthusiasm, or that I am from America, because when I went to Australia, I found that I was there and it was a Canadian artist, and they had such an easier pass because of our American issues, what we demand on people coming here. to come here and play or to come here and get a work visa is hard for them. And they're saying, well, sorry, quid pro quo, you want to come here, it's the same deal. But the Canadian waltzed in and was just like, so, you know, being gracious and being very grateful to be there and realize that, you know, touting the I'm American is not always the smartest move.
Well, you have to explain Donald Trump if you do that.
Yeah.
So the question
is that I've never gone over, and I really would like to go over and start doing some work with my band. And I realize that the cost grows exponentially. But now, as far as gigs and opportunities to take a 3 or 4 piece,
the only songwriters I've ever dealt with who play with a band coming over from the States pick up a band over there.
Okay.
And there are, the wonderful thing about, and again, I'm mostly referencing Scandinavia, but I mean, this happened to me in Amsterdam. There was a guy, contrabass player, you know, and he heard our set and he said, oh, well, if you ever need anybody, and I went, well, you know, we're doing this gig, but there's no money in it. Yeah, but you know, they have a social system where they're not starving artists, so they play because they like to play. So you can pick up a band who, and there's a real enthusiasm for Americana, country, Americana, you know, roots music. It's amazing. Some of them sound like they came out of Nashville because they study the music. They have conservatories and music schools that are really involved, and it's funded by the government. So, I mean, they're really in it. So you can pick up a great American, you know, country band that's all a bunch of names. You know, they sound like country, so they start talking. Yeah.
Do you think it's wise or unwise to change your set list at any point in your European tour?
I change my set list every song. Yeah, I don't go with any, you know, because it would depend. Now, if you were out on a tour promoting an album and your Warner Brothers just put it out, you better play the freaking album, you know, and play the hit twice, you know. But if you're out there on your own indie, I play what feels right. The times I've tried to follow a list and be smart, it's like it doesn't connect with the room because sometimes it makes sense, but I'll be like, no, it says I should do that, but what I'm feeling is this. So I go with what feels, and then I'm having a more authentic experience, and then we're having a more authentic. To seriously answer your question, I think that we can allow that kind of stuff to play on our insecurities, like, oh, you know, what if I sang out of tune? Oh, I had a bad hair day, or whatever. You know, live now, sing now, and then sing tomorrow. You know, and don't sweat the small stuff. I mean, we're not, you know, media gods who are going to be judged for every wrong shirt we wore that day or whatever. You know? I still notice when I have a bad hair day, which is, you know, anytime the camera catches my solar panel, I think, oh no, but I'm working on it. You know, John Lennon was the shortest Beatle, but he always looked the same height as Paul because all the photos had to be shot at an angle to make it. You know, that was image control. We don't need to. I mean, use the internet for that. Any other questions?
I have one.
Okay, anybody who hasn't asked one yet, and then yes, go ahead, and then, yeah.
Are there any countries that you would advise people maybe to not tour right now?
Syria right now would be a bad. Denmark's actually doing a great job bringing in, accepting a lot of, it's a huge, that's a huge issue right now. I haven't had any bad, countries that, I mean, I've had bad experiences, but usually my own fault. I don't know. I mean, I haven't gone somewhere and thought never again. But then again, I went places I was already curious about. So that was the thing. I wanted to go to those places. And yeah, so some places don't resonate, you know, with, I mean, I thought I would really like a certain place. I go there and go, and you have to work a little harder sometimes to find the culture that's outside the mainstream, because you will find Starbucks, McDonald's, you know, the high streets in most cities look like high streets. So I'm going further and further into the former Eastern European countries, because they're less jaded. I toured in Poland, and it was fantastic. And I was out in the boonies, you know, like little towns with farms, and the people were, you know, they're coming in, it was filled, and they're, oh, it's so lovely to meet you, and, you know, because an American is a rare thing there, you know, it's like a relatively new thing. And there I sold a lot of CDs. And the people with the people with the least money, you know, but they were so appreciative. So, yeah, no negatives. It may be a little indulgent of me, but I want to I want to end with a song, because we're talking about songs. Okay, but one more question before, okay.
How do you get paid? Is there a standard protocol
For collecting the money?
Yeah, for actually getting the money.
No, but it's about being very clear. Email is wonderful for that. Making sure that whenever I have an agreement with someone, like on Messenger or a phone call or whatever, I write an email saying, this is what I understood from our conversation. Would you please just confirm if I have it right or not? And so I've created a document. Now, if they're not going to honor it, you know, I don't have time to take them to whatever small claims court is in those countries. But I've never had anybody outside of Los Angeles try and that was a highly publicized case 30 years ago, Cafe Largo. Terrible. He was a criminal. Anyway, probably still is. Who knows? If you're watching this video, you still owe me money. Yeah, I just created an email. I mean, there are contracts in some of the venues, again, depending if you have a work permit and all that. But,
Do they do like a PayPal type of thing?
no, it used to be a lot of cash. It's more bank transfer now to have some kind of tracking with, or you invoice them if you're a foreign artist. I haven't been a foreign artist for a while because I'm in the EU now, so I haven't been dealing with that. That's a good question for me to look up. Yeah. Okay. I don't mind hanging out for questions, although I also am supposed to duck into the other. Rob will tell me how much time I have to answer further questions. But I will say, I want to remember, before I play my song, I'm in town for a short while, but the school, Rob has graciously made space available for me here from 6:30 till 9:30 on Monday evening, where I can book consultations. And I will tell you that here's the commercial. My consultations usually are an hour long, and they're usually at $125 an hour. I do them for $75 for anybody who's been here at the workshop. And there are only 3 spots, so talk to me afterwards if you want it. And I also do online consultations, Skype, FaceTime, all that kind of stuff. And I have a stack of cards. Just remember, if you just can come up and take them, and they've got so many URLs that you'll get dizzy. But these are the various musical projects and the retreats and all that. And you're all welcome to email me if you're coming to Europe. Just remember, you seem pretty busy. When you have a moment. I'm looking like a year in advance. Those kinds of things go down really well. And being follow-up is a fine art. Being persistent without being annoying. I'll actually sometimes address that to someone if I haven't heard back, like on the third message. I'll say, I hope I'm not being annoying. I'm just trying to be efficient, to get to the yes or the no. You got to be depends on the person. All right, I'm going to indulge in a song. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to do it anyway. Because it's new. You know how you're in love with all your new songs? At least in the short term. Sometimes there's sort of like infatuations, but I think this is a long-term relationship. And it's about a long-term relationship. She lifts me up when I am down. With words, helps turn me around. The sweetest smile I've ever seen is in her eyes. Golden through our love, I am redeemed. All this and more she brings to me. Deep in my soul, shadowed space, stories untold, buried pain. As they unfold, she takes my hand, lets me know I'm still her man. And through our love, I am at peace. All this and more she brings to me. words helps turn me around. The sweetest smile I've ever seen in her eyes, golden gleam. And through our love I am redeemed. All this and more she brings to me. Through our love I am at peace. All this and more she brings to me. All this and more she brings to me. All this and more she brings to me.
There you go.
He's my captive audience. I just feel we're talking about music for so long, you know, put your song.
Good to hear.
Thank you. Thanks to Rob and to having this place. It's
Thanks for being here.
so good to have something like this and have this in Los Angeles, because I was with the National Academy of Songwriters, and when that closed some years later, I thought, now what? You know, but nature abhors a vacuum. The spirit rises again. So please do take cards, come on up, and or you know, pass them around, grab them. And I also have an email list if you're interested in getting info. You can find me on Facebook as well. But if you want to put your email here, I'll leave my pen. Please don't walk away with the pen because it was given.
And one more reminder, everybody,
Yes.
Paul Zolo interviews the great Neil Sedaka Monday the 13th, 1:30 seating, 2 p.m. start, with special guest Phil Cody. Hope you can come. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Rob. That was awesome.
Bud. Thanks for being here. Good to see you,
Yeah,
man.
really cool.
Good. Thanks for being here.
British, I don't know. Boy.
How you been?
You all set to hit the road now?
Exactly. There was a lot of
Thanks here. You still doing the roots?
Pretty good, how about you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, that would be for me.
Good to see you, Rob. Hey, howdy there.
All right. So this
Oh, on that show. I'm not doing that. I just thought I would rather.
You can try maybe actually ruin a good thing, ruin your
Oh, that's okay.
or even add one.
Yeah,
Might have been one.
yeah.
Yeah, there's that.
They're open.
Just pass it around if you don't want to.
Yeah. Well, you should have done it without getting all the friends and family involved.
That would have been nice.
Are you doing it on your local Facebook?
I'm raising a new raising new baby and
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to do the masters. I did it last night, but I missed the honors class, and I'm traveling again next week, so I just get back.
They're all I do. They're pretty